A mob of extremists disrupted the International Yoga Day celebration in the Maldivian capital of Male. This disruption was not merely a law and order situation, it had more to do with extremism and the anti-India movement initiated by opposition leader and former Maldivian President Abdulla Yameen. Anti-India protests have acquired a violent edge ever since India and Maldives moved closer on maritime security. The present government's good relations with India have also angered anti-India forces in the island nation. So, how will such protests affect India's relations with the Maldives? Is China fanning the anti-India campaign? Times of India spoke to Bombay Gateway House senior fellow Amit Bhandari.
The first thing is that Maldives does have an extremism problem, and that has to be acknowledged. On a per capita basis, Maldives has provided the maximum number of recruits to ISIS in Syria and Iraq. And with over 100 Maldivians, I think close to 200, traveling over there to fight for the banned organization. Now, this is in a country which has a population of under 1 million. So this is a very large number. And there have also been a number of attacks within Maldives itself, including the stabbing and murder of a blogger, Yamin Rashid, in 2017. He was critical of religious extremism. So very clearly, there is an undercurrent of Islamic extremism in Maldives. And yoga, of course, is an easy target. And I think there is also a constituency which is opposed to better relations with India, which probably has some backing from China. So if you combine these two, I think that explains why this happened. It is a serious matter, yes. Now, one is that India, compared to all its neighbors, is a much larger country. And as a larger neighbor, there is going to be some antipathy, which is natural, that's going to be there in the smaller neighbors. You simply cannot help that. But when it starts causing street violence, that is when I think it becomes a problem. So this is something which this on-the-ground extremism and anti-India violence is something, an issue that Maldivian government needs to deal with. But I think at a government-to-government level, India's ties with Maldives are very cordial now. They have had a downturn in the past under the coup government, which was there earlier. And I think in a number of neighboring countries, we have seen this, that increasing Chinese investment came in, the governments, more anti-India governments came into the place. I would think so, simply because the campaign is being driven by the party which lost the last election. The president of that party has been convicted, I think, for money laundering. He also had a role to play in the 2012 coup, which ousted President Nasheed. So I think this person Yamin is trying to stage a political comeback, and one way to do that is to try and discredit the incumbent government by categorizing them as Indian stooges. So I think simply it is also at one level a political comeback, trying to masquerade as trying to use anti-India sentiment for right. And so I think to that extent, the Maldivian government also would probably be, it is definitely not a part of this. Look, at a government-to-government level, I have already said that this is the relations are quite cordial. The other part is that Maldives is closely economically tied to India in terms of commerce. And also, I think there is a significant Indian investment which is there in Maldives. So I think close economic ties will ensure that most Maldivians will continue to see India as an important economic partner and not a hostile power. We also need to make sure that we do not do anything to contribute to a poor image. Now, the extremists you cannot really convince. There are people who are either opposed to who are either religious extremists or whose political survival depends on being anti-India. Then you can't really convince, but you have to ensure that they remain marginalized and not take any missteps of our own. And I think the lessons of Sri Lanka, which went with China and is now facing a very bad economic crisis, and Maldives' own experience with Chinese investments should be very instructive. While I cannot say whether China is actively fanning this sentiment, but it is very clearly people who are supportive of China or who have collaborated with China, who are at the helm of this movement. Now, we need to look at the past 10 years, the history of the last 10 years. This is when Maldives had its first coup. GMR, which was building the Malé airport, was booted out, and the project instead was awarded to a Chinese consortium. And this was enabled by the new regime that came in after the coup. Following this, China started a number of other projects in Maldives under very opaque terms. So it was not clearly known for a long time what the terms were, what kind of interest rates, how much money was actually paid and spent. And in 2017, then the Maldivian constitution was amended. So this was a 1,000-page document which got adopted after around 30 minutes of debate, which essentially allowed foreigners to own land in Maldives. Now, Maldives is the most land-starved country in the world, extremely thickly populated, very small landmass. Now, it has been alleged that China owns a number of islands in Maldives as per media reports, and all this wouldn't have been possible without local collaborators. And these are the collaborators we see who are at also the helm of this anti-India move sentiment. Yameen, I guess, is prime amongst them.